This podcast discusses child sexual abuse and the impacts of harm on children and families. While we won't include graphic detail, some listeners may find this content distressing. Please take care while listening and consider pausing or seeking support if you need to. There's many and varied support services available, including Lifeline on 13 11 14, Kids Helpline for 5 to 25-year-olds on 1800 55 1800, and the Sexual Assault Helpline on 1800 010 120. If you're outside of Australia, we encourage you to seek a local support service. In the previous episodes of In Plain Sight, we've heard about the human cost of child sexual abuse, and we've examined where the system failed to see, hear, and respond to children who needed protection. In this episode, we turn to Part C of the In Plain Sight report, the section that looks closely at how institutions responded once concerns were raised and what happened when warning signs were already visible. This part of the review is confronting because it shows that harm was not only enabled by silence or oversight, it was compounded by the way systems interacted, deferred responsibility, and prioritised process over protection. Today, I'm joined again by Commissioner Twyford, who led the review. I'll also be joined by Conrad Townsend, Principal Advisor on Child Sexual Exploitation with Integrated Family and Youth Service and Chair of the National Strategic Partnership on Child Sexual Exploitation, as well as John Rouse, APM, Retired Detective Inspector of the Queensland Police Service and internationally recognised expert in the investigation of child sexual exploitation. Together, we'll unpack what Part C tells us about decision-making under pressure, how risk was repeatedly misunderstood or minimised, and why children continue to be exposed to harm even after concerns were known. This episode is not about blame for individuals. It's about understanding how systems behave when they're fragmented, risk-averse, and unclear about who is ultimately responsible for a child's safety. Hi Luke, let's get serious. This was a review into Queensland's responses to child sexual abuse. So let's talk about how our systems responded or didn't respond to children being harmed in plain sight. First question I've got is around Part C of the report. It focused on what happened after concerns were raised in the case that it looks at. From your perspective, what is the most significant system failure revealed in this section of the report?
There's a number of failures, if we use that word, actually deeper in this report and overarching. We found that the systems are inadequate. Our blue card system, our criminal justice system, our child safe organisation system, the way we regulate early childcare, there weren't system failures. It was that the way we actually operate universally across Australia is inadequate to detect and respond to these types of threats to our children. So that's the primary takeaway. I think the other one, and the other one I grappled with as a lawyer, was really that the criminal justice system has too much importance in how we respond. A child discloses to their mother films the disclosure. It's instantly treated as evidence for a police investigation where the police say, oh, we can't use that evidence. So we diminish the humanity. We minimise the child articulating as a child does what happened. We minimise parenting because we're all trying to funnel it into will this become a legal file in a court case against an offender where we can get a prosecution. We deliberately spent a lot of time talking to victim survivors in this review. We really wanted this to be a special and significant review, noting the case we were looking at, but more importantly, noting the prevalence of child sexual abuse. And one of the quotes that really hit me was from someone who said, when I disclosed that I had been sexually abused, I was asking for help, not a criminal court process. They didn't want to go to the police station. They didn't want to be questioned about and judged as to whether what they were saying would stand up in court. They just wanted help. Mm-hmm. And that really shakes to its core how we respond to child sexual abuse in Australia. We do jump straight to, let's prosecute someone, mm-hmm. let's catch someone, let's put them in handcuffs. There's another side here, which is, well, how do we protect this child knowing what they've gone through? How do we protect all other children? And maybe the primary response shouldn't be a criminal justice response.
So really looking at how do we centre the child in the response that we're going to deliver.
Absolutely. Centre the child and to help them heal, but also protect all other children. And we do place a lot of pressure on our criminal justice system to do that when it may not be the right tool.
Mm. The report identifies multiple opportunities to intervene. I think you refer to them as missed opportunities. Why did escalation fail even when those warning signs were visible and raised?
That's at the heart of it. I think we fragment too quickly over time. A concern from a year ago isn't being used in the concern that was raised today. No one is collecting the threads. So when he moves multiple organisations, those multiple organisations all have a file about him. They all have all the past concerns about him from when he was in their organisation, but no one's putting it together. Then we have a regulator that oversees the sector that is starting to put together those concerns when they reach a threshold. And then we have the police, who have 2 past reports about him, but are investigating the third, unaware of the first one. It doesn't make sense, right? To members of the community, you go, how can that happen? But when you think about, for police, thousands of police officers stretched across the state with hundreds of thousands of police reports, we're talking about a system with information overload in one hand, too much information to know what to do with, in amongst if you can't deal with the case in front of you right now, you're going to get a backlog. You got to keep moving the cases through. You can't spend too much time on them. And you need to focus on who you will be able to prosecute, because that is your job as a police officer. So we've got a world with big problems, lots of cases, meeting a world of, can you please slow down and take the time to understand what's happened to these children in the context of the alleged offender who's operated in many, many places. Who's pulling together the picture? And so I think the shorter answer to your question is, we treat each concern as a jigsaw puzzle piece where we examine the piece and we talk about the quality of the piece, and no one is looking at the whole jigsaw.
And I guess that piece of information has a different meaning when you look at it in the context of all of the other information around it.
Absolutely correct. And who does that?
Mm-hmm. I guess that does lead us to the next question I have for you, which is about how institutions manage risk when multiple agencies or organisations are involved. We've spoken at length about the numerous players in this field, people with different roles, all looking at different aspects of a case or a system or a response. So what did the report tell us about how multiple agencies and institutions work together?
I think in essence, in summary, it's that they don't work well together.
Specifically about managing the risk as well.
That's correct. For an organisation, their own risk is doing their job. And so they stick to the boundaries of what they're meant to do, and they expect that other people are doing what they're expected to do. So the blue card scheme operates to provide people blue cards. The Early Childcare Regulatory Authority investigates incidents that happen in early childcare that reach their threshold. Police investigate concerns that reach the criminal threshold. It's actually the gaps between those 3 processes where our systems fail. When you have a child and their parents saying something happened, and a senior officer in an early childcare centre saying, I saw something odd, it doesn't necessarily fit into any of the three systems we've created. And so where does it go? It sits in the gaps. And if everyone takes the attitude of that's not my job, then we leave children exposed to risk and harm.
That really came through in the report's criticism, I guess, of governance and oversight arrangements. What specifically broke down at that level?
I think in part that shared responsibility for vigilance, the sharing of intelligence. So if conceptually a police officer has investigated a concern, interviewed the child, interviewed a witness, recorded all that, but made the decision that there's no further action to take, the police will close that file. That record will be closed. But all that information, what the child said, what the witness said, could help the regulator and it could help the organisation. And more importantly, it could help any future employer of this person. But we treat it as closed and we don't share it. That's really where we need sharing of intelligence to be far better to protect our children.
Part C also speaks to institutional culture. How did culture influence decision-making in the case that you looked at?
Well, there were many organisations, including a labour hire company who employed this person and placed him at multiple childcare centres. I think culture, again, comes back to responsibility and accountability. For some of them, they were pretty narrow in their view of whether it was their job to screen and vet him. When you have an organisation that is desperate for a worker, sees someone with the right qualifications and experience, to what extent do they do referee reports? You have someone that's very deceitful in their resume. There are gaps where we know in retrospect he was working at places where there were concerns and dismissals, but on the resume he's providing to the next employer, it's a career gap. And I use that as a specific concern, obviously, but more endemically, the organisations aren't showing that they have a culture where the safety of children is worth taking the time to slow down, to ask all the questions they need to ask, to do all the vetting, to treat complaints and concerns as fundamentally serious rather than maybe, that's just a loud parent that speaks up too much and we'll minimise it, or did you really see that or not see that? And so you can see when people get busy, when they get overburdened, when their eye might be on the pressures of getting more clients, increasing profits, all of a sudden this allegation that doesn't have much detail to it is a frustration rather than something serious. Mm-hmm. That's the cultural shift that we absolutely need to make. And that's why so many of our recommendations speak to organisational culture.
And there's a huge role there for leadership, for the role of boards, the role for CEOs, the role for heads of organisations to set that tone, to ensure that that culture cascades down. It's pivotal.
Spot on.
Yeah. So if system leaders do take one lesson from Part C, which is what we've been talking about in this episode, what should that be?
That they fundamentally set where the priorities are for their organisation. If they want to prioritise the safety of children, it's within their power to do so. But it means slowing down recruitment. It means slowing down and investing in things like complaint processes and listening to the voices of children. It means revisiting what core business is, and it means reshaping what governance looks like. They're all things a leader can do. It's an active choice. The reason we've targeted recommendations at the Fair Work Act and a Child Safeguarding Act is really to help leaders take that step to show that by making the safety of children central to their decision making, they actually become a stronger organisation. And I think, if I could be really glib, a parent making a choice about where to place their children will fundamentally see safety as the primary decision-making tool if we can give them the information they need. And so transparency would be the final thing I say leaders need to do. I got some press coverage when this report was released because I said fundamentally parents should be scared of any organisation that says they've had no concerns, because that shows that the leader is too shy, too scared to say that they actually have, and is therefore deceitful about the safety of children, or they're unawares. And I think both of those things should terrify a parent. I want to have my children in an organisation that tells me upfront, honestly, we had 2 concerns last year. This is what we did about them. This is what we learned. This is what we've put in place. That's a mature organisation with really good leadership.
It's absolutely fundamental and critical reform. And thank you very much for sharing your insights with us.
Thanks, Kirsty.